I really can't believe we drove out this far. Really, I can't. Just days before its launch, Nissan Philippines invited us on a 500-kilometer test drive and a chance to review their latest product that they will be launching, which is this, the 2022 Nissan Kicks e-Power. Very important e-Power, and we'll discuss exactly why. Now, the shape and the size of the automobile is something that's very familiar on Philippine roads. We've seen it left and right, but it's what's inside and basically underneath is what's really gonna, well, knock the wind out of you. Before we get into it, much love to Aguila Auto Glass.
So tell me again, why are we here and why do I have this mic on me?
Well, Jack, we're at Aguila Auto Glass on Quezon Ave simply because I cannot allow you to continue driving with a windshield like this. It's just too dangerous. I'm gonna buy you a new one. There's a crack on it.
Cracked windshield? There's nothing wrong with it. What are you talking about?
Dude, I'm telling you, there's a crack right there.
What crack?
See? It's right there. That's dangerous, man. We gotta change this. May sira ulo naghagis ng bato. Celebrating 70 years and 25 locations around Luzon from Luwag to Legazpi, Aguila Auto Glass is able to cover 103 brands and 8,000 models all in stock. Even obsolete cars like Jack's 1999 Nissan Ad Resort, no problem. Aguila Auto Glass can retrofit any panel, stock, or bespoke in under 2 hours. And get this, they even deliver. Reach out via their website, Facebook, and/or hotline numbers easily found online. There's no pain too large, no curve too complex. Aguila Auto Glass. If it ain't the red eagle head logo, it ain't worth it. Come on, man. They did a great job, and in under 2 hours, too. You know, now that we're done with this, I think you need new tires.
What?
This is not exactly the first time we have our hands on the Kicks. We actually had it for a quick little walk around to discuss the engine, but we really couldn't go into detail about the automobile because it was still, well, under wraps of bright blue wallpaper or whatnot that had e-Power all over it. Today, however, it's been unwrapped and we can tell you what's exactly underneath, what's inside, how the car looks like from the outside, and more importantly also, how it drives. But first, we'll start at the front clip, which if you look at the front grille, this is what Nissan calls as the double V motion grille. Double V meaning because there's a V right here that you can see, and I don't know if you can tell, but there is a vague V found right about here, and it's all blacked out and it looks great. You also have a full LED affair from your headlamps to your fog lamps, including your DRLs. Very nice. Oh, lest I forget, there's also a very cute little chrome finish found on the chip. Down the side is where you can get a better angle of the car and just exactly how it looks like and how it compares to other cars on the road. Now, its dimensions are closer to that of, say, the Coolray, the ZST, the HRV, and even the Ford Territory, which, by the way, we have a review on those 4 cars because we put it up on a Comparo, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sure that the links are somewhere up here or in the description below. But back to the Kicks. We'll start from here. You've got somewhat of a bubble above the front wheels, and then 3 cuts that are found, one here, and one here, that start roughly from the A-pillar. Well, this cut starts obviously from the front and then tapers all the way to the C-pillar, giving it a nice fluid motion kind of a thing, like it's always going front. At top, you've got roof rails. It's all blacked out here. You've got repeaters on your side mirror with cameras as well. You're looking at 180 millimeters of ground clearance, and of course, 17-inch wheels wrapped in 55 series tires. The one thing that Jack helped me realize is the windows of this automobile are actually quite large for its size, which allows a lot of light to get in. And yes, the Philippines can get quite sunny, but I've always liked a lot of light to come in when you're going out on a drive like this, really. Let's go to the rear, shall we? At the back, you've got a huge but oddly shaped tail lamp. It's odd because it's sharp here on the sides, and then it gets wide with a weird angle here, and then it gets sharp once again. It truly is odd, but the nice thing about it, the cool thing about it, is that the lights inside actually match the configuration, and it's really a trip when you're looking at it from the rear, and it gives the car somewhat of a kick, so to speak. Forgive me, I'm old. Anyway, that's actually pretty cool. I think they missed out on, however, is that this here is just a reflector. There is no light here. It's not your third brake light. Your third brake light is found up here. Another quirk with the rear is that when you open her up, look at the size, or rather the shape of the door. Isn't that a bit strange? But cool. Anyway, when you open her up, you are looking at 480 liters of space, which is good enough for a balikbayan box, even with the tonneau. And then, of course, that expands to over 800 liters when you take the tonneau out, and fold down the third row seats. But the most interesting part about the rear is actually not anywhere up here. It's found down below. This is a tailpipe, as you would say that all cars do. But this car really isn't supposed to have a tailpipe because it's an electric vehicle, so to speak. So what's a tailpipe doing here, you might ask? Well, that's a very, very good question. That tailpipe is in use when this guy is on, the internal combustion engine, which is, okay, it's a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder gasoline engine, but that only powers on when it needs to charge the batteries of the automobile, not the drivetrain. And those batteries in turn power this, the Nissan e-Power motor. That is the only motor that drives the car. So essentially, it's an EV. An EV that produces 100 kilowatts of power, which is essentially 134 horses and 280 Newton meters of torque on a car that weighs less than 1,400 kilograms. Now, everybody essentially wants to go electric because it's more affordable and obviously it's better for the environment. The problem is when you go around the city, sure, but when you want to take it out of town, you've got very minimal charging points, especially if you want to go to places like this. But this, because the gasoline engine only turns up to power the batteries, that means you've got zero range anxiety. So essentially, to get to this, Nissan says, get this. The rear seats, I gotta tell you, they're actually very, very comfortable. It's not as plush as, let's say, for example, a Patrol. But by the way, if you want to see that review, I'm sure that the link is somewhere up here or in the links found down below. But it's obviously a heck of a lot more fuel efficient than the Patrol, I'll tell you that. But the seats, like I said, it's not as plush as the Patrol, but there's a good amount of give. It's comfortable, it really is. There's not a lot of bolstering, so sliding might be an issue if you're taking the curbs at speed, but it's actually very comfortable. Leg room is pretty decent. Headroom is actually good. I don't think it's as spacious as, let's say, for example, a Ford Territory, but nonetheless, it's a comfortable place to be in. Toys back here include, well, no center armrest, so there's no cup holder there, but there are 2 charging points found here in the center. Unfortunately, no air vents, which I think kind of sucks. And if a third passenger were to get in, it's there's a tunnel, so it's not all that comfortable. So, but 4 people, sure. And then elbow room obviously is not an issue. Back to the toys, speakers on either door, and bottle holders that can hold small, medium, up to somewhat large bottles can be put on the door. Speaking of the door, that's a bit of an issue for me because there's a lot of plastic on the door. In fact, almost the entire door is scratchy plastic. I wish that it was like better material, but it just means that it's durable and easy to clean. Also, I found that this small patch right here is actually softer material, and I wish the door was actually softer material, but I found that this piece right here is actually softer material because if you want to put your elbow on it while you're sitting down, it's actually a nicer place to put it. It's not as, as rough as this, really. Now on to the business end of the kicks. Let's start up top and work our way down. Up top, the dashboard is, well, unfortunately, it's scratchy plastic too. It's much similar to what's found on the door. Again, it just basically means it's durable and can be easily cleaned. As you move down, it does get a little bit softer, which is nice, but then it returns to scratchy black plastic found underneath. For the driver, you've got a 7-inch trip computer, and and an analog gauge. The analog gauge is actually your speedometer, but you also have a digital speedometer found. What you don't find is a tachometer because, well, you don't need one. It's an electric-driven motor car. Am I even saying that right? I'm not sure, but it's an electric vehicle is what I'm trying to get at. The steering wheel is, well, it could have been a little better. It's leather, but again, it's not the best of leather, but it's decent to the touch that I did not develop any calluses while driving 500 kilometers. No, that's never gonna happen, truthfully. There are buttons on your steering wheel for your audio and your cruise. Cruise control is there, but it's not adaptive cruise. Now, I've made it known that I'm not really a big fan of adaptive cruise, but I guess some people would expect it from an automobile, especially if it's an electric vehicle nonetheless. Okay, so the infotainment screen is an 8-inch touchscreen with Android and Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, of course. It's pretty easy to use, not a lot of depth in it when you're trying to get to one or another. It's pretty straightforward, and it's actually very clear. Underneath that, you've got your air controls, very simple and easy to get to. Under that, you've got your Type-C charging point and Type-A charging point with a 12-volt socket. This right here and here, you've got cubby holes found all over the car, truth be told. I wish it was wireless charging, but it's not. But it's a good place to put your cell phone so that it doesn't move about. Here in the center, you've got a lot of, well, plastic black pianos, which are, you know, thumbprint and scratchy magnets kind of a thing. But the nice thing is that it's limited to there. And around the air vents too, but you don't really necessarily touch that. Here is where it's kind of bothersome. More cubby holes found here in the center. These are actually cup holders, but if you take the center out, it can actually be a huge cubby hole. Then you've got a tiny little center armrest with some space there and a coin holder too. And also a quite large glove box. There are my sunglasses. I've been looking for these. Okay, well, we'll just leave them there. Now, the funkiest part about the cabin would be the electronic shifter. It's very funny looking. It's ergonomic, but it's kind of funny looking, and it's very wee. It's very tiny. But it does have some great functions in it, including a letter D and a letter B, which I will get to when we hop in for a drive, which we're going to do right now. Before we do, we would definitely appreciate a like and a subscription to our channel because we create all of these videos just for you guys. The seats of the Kicks, even in this top-of-the-line form, are not powered. Not here, not on the passenger side. But I can tell you that they are zero-gravity seats, much like you will find in other Nissan products. I bring that up because, well, I'm sure that everybody will say that we drove 500 kilometers to Misibis Bay and obviously back to Metro Manila, which will encompass 1,000 kilometers. But nobody will ever say that they didn't really feel all that bad when they got out of the automobile because the seats are actually quite comfortable. They're great for the driver and the passenger. Fatigue is obviously, yes, it's going to be there, but it's not overly fatigued. It's great for driving. Not so great, unfortunately, for sleeping. Well, that's according to Jack anyway. You know you can just use the headrest, right? Now, up and down the variants, the 3 variants that are available, you will get certain degrees of NIM, or Nissan's Intelligent Mobility, NIM. I can tell you that obviously the top of the line will be the most packed. Unfortunately, there is one particular tech that's missing, and I found it a bit odd, which is the blind spot monitoring. And I figured that because, well, when we were passing cars or when cars were passing us, there was no little beep beep that was coming out in the mirrors. Strange. The 280 Newton meters of torque is very linear. Now, I know we've used this term way too many times in the past, but truly here in this case, it really, really is. Because the power, you can feel it, the 280 Newton meters of torque, but it's not as if the car wants to jump into a wheel spin. No, it's planted well and it goes very quickly. It's power in a snap. There's no spool like as if it was a turbo or lag because you have to find gears to figure out, or rather the car needs to find what gear it needs to get to be able to go as quickly as possible. Not in this, because there is only essentially one gear, right? And when you put it in, it just goes. There are also several drive modes that you can go through. There's normal, there's eco, and of course there's sport. Sport is just built, it just makes the car feel a little bit tighter, a little bit more responsive. The difference, however, is that there is an additional of a B drive. So you've got drive and brake, which is B. Now what that does is when you're driving along in your normal automobile, when you release the accelerator, there is a coast to it, right? It slows down very, very slowly. But when you apply the brake or the B mode, it tightens up a lot, to a sense that it will actually break your momentum. Like an e-pedal on the Leaf, when you release the accelerator, the car immediately starts to slow down because the car is actually slowing itself down to regenerate. The beauty about it is that I personally hate braking momentum. I absolutely abhor it. I like to keep going and going and going. But in this case, when the car itself brakes and it breaks momentum, it's because it's regenerating. It's feeding itself all that energy back into the system. So it's like you were able to get a free ride in a taxi, or you go to a gasoline station and you got a free liter of fuel. It feels good. It doesn't feel wasteful at all. And that I love about it. Oh, you floor it, and you can feel the power really kick in. What you have to remember is that when you do floor it and you hear the engine kick in, it's not powering the wheels. No, it's just powering the battery so that the batteries can power the electric motor. Then the electric motor is what's pushing you along. It's at least it's calming to know that there's still something that sounds like something that is familiar to you, right? An internal combustion engine. But know in your heart and in your head that, hey man, that's all electric power that's driving me along. I like that. You know what? Let's put this sucker in sport. Oh, it is in sport. Okay. It's sport. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that'll push you in your seat, man. That's some good stuff. NVH is actually pretty decent, really. There was never a time where Jack or I inside the automobile were like, whoa, that's a little noisy. No, whether we were crawling in traffic, going over bumps, or on the highway, the car is actually pretty quiet. Yes, when the road becomes a little too Filipinish, is what I'm trying to say, when there's got like potholes all over the place, then yeah, you will start to hear it inside. But for the most part, it's actually a pretty quiet car. Other sounds that you will essentially expect from a car will be engine noise. And in this case, there still is. Now, yes, I did mention that the car runs just simply on e-power and the lithium-ion batteries, but the engine up front still powers a generator to power the batteries, right? And that obviously, there's a rev to it. It somewhat sounds like it's accelerating when you do put the pedal down because it needs to charge the batteries a little bit. This is obviously when the batteries need it, but if it doesn't, then you've got a futuristic sound going on. And I guess the best way to describe it would be that in any Hollywood movie that you watch, it's like a high-pitched sound. Hollywood has done it well, that what you tend to hear in movies is essentially what you also hear from this car. So it's got a very futuristic sound and vibe to it. Must admit, the ride is a bit firm, not in a bad way, mind you. It's just firm that it gives you confidence in the twisties, that it doesn't topple over at all. There's a little bit of body roll, but it's nothing alarming. And actually, Jack and I thought that perhaps it would be better if we check the air pressure of the tires. Maybe it was a little overinflated, but no, the tires are at their proper tire pressure, and it's just that it feels a little robust, the suspension. But again, not necessarily in a bad way. It's actually confidence inspiring is what I'm trying to get at, even in the twisties that we are right now. When you get past all the mumbo jumbo about an internal combustion engine that powers the batteries, which then powers the electric motor, which then powers the wheels, get past all of that, there's one thing that's very, very important that I need to, well, mention to you, and you need to know. You really need to know. It's fuel efficiency. It's ridiculous. On an average, getting out of Metro Manila at about 3 in the morning and then getting to Misibis Bay at about, what time did we get there? About 7:30, 8 in the evening. we were doing 20 kilometers, 20.3 kilometers per liter, which is already pretty good. But what I'm trying to get at is we filled up in Mamplasan, drove all the way to Bisibis Bay without ever killing the engine, and we had stops along the way. And the thing about it is, we were able to cover 500 kilometers of driving, and when we got to Bisibis Bay, the computer still told us that there were still 200 kilometers left to go to drive. That's how, that's unfair. And it's not as if we were driving like angels, but we were driving spiritedly. And I can't believe there was still that much left in its tank to take us to 200 kilometers more. It's amazing. Just before we hop out of the car, we got to answer one of the more important questions that our viewers have, which is just exactly how much is the all-new 2022 Nissan Kicks e-Power? The answer is, well, it starts at just 1,209,000 Philippine pesos for the base model. There is a mid-model variant, which is 1,309,000 Philippine pesos, and then this, the VL top of the line, comes in at 1,509,000 Philippine pesos. Well, if you get to it really, to the meat and the bones of it, it's actually quite affordable if you think about it, because even at 1.2 million, you've got yourself a vehicle on e-Power, top of the line at 1.5. Now, I must say, I need to add this, that during our ride and drive and somewhat of a small little vacation to Bisibis Bay, the president did say that this price is somewhat like an introductory price. How long it's going to stay at this price, I have no idea. But for what it is right now, I think it's a pretty good deal. It is my opinion that the two large factors or reasons why people haven't purchased EVs just yet here in the country is that number one is that the infrastructure just isn't ready for it. Not just yet, not quite. Inside the city, yes, we've seen them in McDonald's, in Shell, there are charging stations, right? Unfortunately, when you get outside of Metro Manila, that's when it starts to dwindle. And that's gonna be a problem if you wanna go on a long drive. The second is the price of these electric vehicles. You're supposed to kind of get tax breaks left and right for these vehicles, but unfortunately, bringing it in, the importation is still a bit on the expensive side. The thing about it is, and I'm not saying that Nissan is the end-all and be-all when it comes to car companies coming up with a bridge, but this particular Kicks, I think they've found a very, very good compromise to those questions. It is by no means the perfect vehicle. God knows that there is no such thing. It does have shortcomings, yes, and we've pointed that out, but it has a lot of great points to it. The one great thing that it does answer is for those consumers that are ready to take the step into the next level of EVs. See, it has zero range anxiety. How can you say that about any other car currently in the Philippines? You just simply can't. It's a great step for those that want to go in that direction. It is truthfully what I believe as currently the best bridge that we've got between ICE and EV in the country. It truly, truly is.